RPG. How many times have you heard that term? Hundreds? Maybe thousands? What games come to mind? Fallout, Skyrim, Starfield? What about Red Dead Redemption 2? Doesn't really come to mind, does it? Everyone knows Bethesda has been the single-player RPG kings for a while now, but maybe it should be Rockstar. But what is an RPG? If you're watching this video, you probably already know, but I'll briefly explain for you random, non-gaming viewers. RPGs, or role-playing games, are big, open-world games with character progression that involves leveling up and generally growing the skill tree. It's also full of different characters, and it usually has a long, vast journey that you're able to attack in your own way. Makes sense for Starfield, Skyrim, and the like, but Red Dead Redemption 2? I don't see it, you might be thinking, but I do, and I'll explain why in a second. You see, I played Red Dead 2 when it first came out back in 2018. I also played and loved Red Dead Redemption 1 when it came out way back in 2010. In fact, Undead Nightmare is my favorite DLC of all time. Rockstar, I'm still waiting on Undead Nightmare 2. Let's get a move on. Now, if you know the main story of Red Dead 1, you know that Arthur, the second game's protagonist, didn't make it out. But as far as I remember, they didn't explain that in the first game. This made me immediately focus on the main story of Red Dead 2, since I really wanted to know what happened to Arthur. And I was only doing side quests as they popped up, meaning I didn't really explore much to see what was going on in Red Dead 2's America. I got about halfway with the game, but put it down. After a long hiatus, I picked it back up and played until the later chapters. As I neared the end, something kept bothering me. See, Rockstar is really good at injecting random encounters and experiences that don't warrant a full side mission. In Red Dead 2 and even GTA 5, this usually manifests into helping others on the side of the road. However, there's also things and people you discover in random places, like in the forest or on a side trail, and a lot of times there's a horror element to these discoveries. If you know me, you know I love horror. I knew there were mysterious things out there in Red Dead 2, but I didn't discover many of them on my first playthrough organically. I did get kidnapped by a serial killer, but other than that, I don't remember finding anything on my own. I'm ashamed to admit that sometimes I'd even Google where the horror things are, but it wasn't long before I decided I didn't want to know and preferred to discover things on my own. So, being near the end of the game and feeling as though I barely found any of these encounters, I didn't want to finish, because I knew once I had completed the main story, I'd have no interest in going back to discover everything. So I once again stopped playing. But the other day I decided to pick it up again and start from scratch. This time I thought, I'm going to take my time and explore and look for these encounters and strangers. So far, I've already seen the work of the serial killer under the train tracks and discovered the family that died of carbon monoxide poisoning just by randomly exploring. It was in this exploration and adventuring that I learned something. Red Dead 2 is an amazing RPG. Now, is there a skill tree and leveling up like you have in Skyrim? No, not necessarily, but there definitely are skills. For example, as you shoot and fight more, your Deadeye improves. It starts off auto-tagging enemies, but eventually you get to control who it tags. Another example is riding your horse. As you level up your riding and bond with it more, you can eventually, drift? Not to mention many other skills you can work on. Hunting, cooking, sprinting, and a bunch more. You can even customize Arthur to your liking, changing his hair, his beard, his clothes. I can't tell you how many YouTube videos I've seen where people have Arthur looking like a hobo, armed to the teeth, running around America, while I have him dressed humbly throughout the game. It isn't as obvious as it is in a Bethesda game, or even, let's say, a Square Enix game, but they're skills nonetheless. See, I think the proper way to play Red Dead Redemption 2 is by role-playing as your character Arthur. But I think it goes even beyond that. In addition to all the side content and random events that unfold as you progress the game, Red Dead 2 has an amazing interaction system. It allows you to interact with basically anyone you see or meet in the game. In my first run, I went for an overall high honor playthrough, even resetting a save if I felt bad about my decision to murder the in-game AI known as other people. This playthrough though, whatever I did, stood. I also wasn't as concerned with having high honor. I'd like one overall, but it wasn't such a necessity this time. After all, in real life, we're usually not completely high or low honor, so why would I try to make Arthur one or the other? I wanted to let his honor change organically through my own decisions and actions on the spot, not because I pre-planned how I'd play the game. I reminded myself that Arthur is a gangster. He's not exactly a saint, so that's how I played, and it really opened up the game for me. I was role-playing as Arthur the gangster, but you can also role-play as Arthur the hunter, or Arthur the cook. To be fair though, you still have to be a gangster to get through the main missions.
Let me hand you over to my friend then.
Although now that I think about it, it's like that in most RPGs. The main story makes you fight and explore, while the rest of your skills are generally supplemental. In this way, Red Dead 2 is like those more traditional RPGs. But what sets it apart? Is it the story? Is it the world? Is it the characters? Yes, it's all of these things. But I think it's even evident right from the beginning. A lot of these games start off strong and slowly fall off until they eventually become interesting again, at least in my own experience. For example, I recently started Fallout 4 again after beating it ages ago, mostly because Starfield sucked and I wanted to experience a good Bethesda game. The world is still very interesting and it gives sense of exploration, but in my opinion, its first few quests are spaced out too far apart. Now you could definitely argue that this is done so that you can discover things on your way there, in a way that does work, but to me, even as a fan of the series, there was something missing this time around. With Red Dead, however, the missions early on felt a bit closer to each other. Maybe because I had a horse, but still left room to explore. To me, it seems that the world of Red Dead Redemption 2 is more alive than Fallout or even Skyrim. And I don't just mean the people. Although if you're comparing it to Fallout, the people are literally more alive. What I mean is that in Red Dead, the NPCs feel more like real people, with real things happening in their lives. Now chances are that most of them are just running on scripts that make them do the same things over and over, but it's different than the other games I've mentioned. For example, near Valentine, there's a man with two sons building a house, and as you progress the story, the house is actually being built. And I saw another video where And I saw another video where railroad workers actually moved on to a new bolt after fully hammering in the previous one. Now, I realize Red Dead's world isn't a nuclear wasteland like Fallout. It's more populated and newer than Skyrim, so naturally the NPCs are going to be more alive in this game. In Skyrim and Fallout, a lot of these random interactions come because somebody randomly runs up to you. You could be in the middle of nowhere or in the middle of a field and they just run up to you and suddenly start speaking to you. Where did they come from? Nobody knows. Now don't get me wrong, Red Dead 2 does this a little bit itself. You'll be heading towards a mission and someone will just be standing there asking you for help very suspiciously. There's also people out in the distance and you can often see campfire smoke rising up into the sky. So you could head there or not and decide if you wanted to interact with that person. Now there's two things that Red Dead really excels with these random interactions that these Bethesda games miss. First, you really don't know what's going to happen when you stop and talk to this person. If you've played Red Dead 2 long enough, you know that sometimes these random people will just stop and rob you, try to take your horse, try to kill you, something. It's gotten to the point that when I do pull over and try to help somebody, I'm immediately weary of what their true intentions are. I never felt this way with Skyrim and Fallout. It's happened so often at Red Dead that I start finding myself not trusting these random NPCs on the side of the road. I start to question what they're saying and carefully approach the situation. The beauty of it is that it gives you this option, whereas with Bethesda games, you're immediately drawn into the conversation and can't really escape. The second thing they do better is they allow the player to go up and find these interactions. Like I mentioned, you can see smoke usually rising from a campfire that somebody made off in the distance. So it's either up to the player to go up to them and see if they're friendly or not, or even if you just want to go and rob them, you could do that too. And these feel totally unscripted. Now I'm sure that a lot of these are programmed into the game to randomly appear on your screen and randomly be off in the distance, sure. But in Skyrim, Fallout, all my memories of these random interactions felt scripted. You could reload to save and they'll be in the same exact spot every time. But in Red Dead, if you see a campfire, save the game, exit, come back, it's not going to be there anymore. Look at Starfield. It just came out. The random NPCs and even the ones you interact with for your quests come off as lifeless compared to Red Dead's NPCs. Even the ones for the main story are embarrassingly bland compared to even a random person you meet on the side of the road as Arthur. I mean, look at this. This sucks. I actually really like Skyrim and the Fallout games, especially New Vegas. I just use Bethesda as the main example and the main target of my criticism because RPGs are what they do. So naturally, I'm going to compare other RPGs to theirs. To put it in perspective, Bethesda started Elder Scrolls in 1994. That means they've been making RPGs for 30 years. Anyway, I think what sets apart Red Dead Redemption 2 from other RPGs is the life breathed into the game. You have skills and a form of leveling up like other games, but it makes you feel as though you were just a single person in an entire world of other equally important people. In Skyrim, you're essentially explicitly told you're a superhero, while in Fallout and Starfield, the game makes you feel like a superhero. But when I play Red Dead, I just feel like another person, and I like it that way. Build Arthur how you want. He's just some guy. Or he's a raging warlord that can slaughter an entire town of people with just a revolver and a rifle. It's really up to you. So, what do you guys think? Am I just totally schizo or is this valid? Let me know. Peace.